On the show today, Hunger in Mexico, I'm your host Ernesto, and we are going to see all the ideas about many of the problems regarding food and all that stuff. Yeah. Did you know that in Mexico about 8.5 million people, or about 7% of the population, need to live on less than $2 a day? And at least 10% of all residents of Mexico experience poor access to food. And that is not all. Also, the inadequate food access affects between 25 and 35% of the population in 9 states. And Mexico too suffers from issues with malnutrition, anemia, overweight, and obesity. And about 13% of children under the age of 5 suffer from malnutrition, and 1 in 4 children is overweight or obese. A fun fact. Rates of malnutrition are highest in rural areas and obesity is highest in urban areas. Well, not that fun, right? Wait, what? Excuse me. We got Terry, our man on the land, reporting stuff about the food on Mexico. Let's hear what he has to say. Terry, we hear you. Terry, could you... okay, Terry, could... okay. Okay, so Terry is unavailable right now, but he sent us this information, and that information says that according to the data acquired by the National Survey of Wholesale Food and Nutritional Status in Rural Areas, all food groups for a healthy diet were available for sale within the communities. The problem is that the residents do not have sufficient income to purchase all the goods they need. Now that is an interesting piece of information. That makes me wonder, what has the government done about this? What has the government done to solve this problem? Well, the answer might surprise you, but there is something the government has done. The President Enrique Peña Nieto instituted an executive order that he will fight the issue directly. In Chiapas, he announced a program called La Cruzada Nacional contra el Hambre, or National Crusade Against Hunger. That's an interesting name, isn't it? Sounds like imposing. Anyway, the program worked to enhance the social development, education, and defense amongst 400 of the country's poorest communities. He also began the Sistema Nacional contra el Hambre, National System Against Hunger. That worked to be a legal medium for government agencies and the communities over issues about hunger. But since Enrique Peña Nieto left the office, the program has been since abandoned? Oh, damn. But do not worry, folks. Now the actual government of Andrés Manuel has El Plan Nacional de Desarrollo. That it has many things that resolve the problems of Mexico. And regarding the strategies for food, they plan to diminish in 3 million every year the poor people, but actual details haven't been released, so stay tuned. But after all this political talk, let's hear what the people have to say about this thing. Now I'm going to show you some interviews, but because the interviewees did not speak English, we got this advanced translation software for you to understand. The first interviewee was someone who works in the food industry. He's a farmer, he has 2 children, is 55 years old, and has a wife.
How much time do you have to wait in order to buy food? I buy food about every 2 days, or to the market and buy food, or I eat there. Don't you eat your own products? From time to time when I grow, for example, tomatoes or corn, but I mostly buy my food from the market. Does the government tax you for the food that you sell? Yes. Have you received any kind of funding from the local government from crop production? No. Have your children ever gone a day without eating one meal? No, they haven't, but I had.
As you see, an interesting point of view. His point of view is important because he helps in food production, but is also affected by food shortage. And let's get on with the next interview. The next interview is a lady called Remedios Jimenez. She lives in the countryside with four children, all under the age of 12. She works selling plants and tea.
How much time do you have to wait in order to buy food? Depends on the time of the year. Because sometimes it is easier to come to Querétaro and buy food, other times we might have to wait a whole week for me to afford a new batch of food. What does this batch of food include? Powdered milk for my baby, mostly beans, eggs and cereal. Is there a shop or place where you can buy food in your community? No. What do you have to do to buy food? Either walk 4 hours, or take a lift in any truck that is coming to Querétaro. Do your children come with you regularly to Querétaro? No, I only bring my youngest child because he is a baby, but one time I tried to bring my oldest daughter. She fainted, and we had to return.
Her perspective about the issue is important because she is one of the main people affected by this problem. And to the third and last interview, we are going to interview Fabian Nestor Jimenez. He's 12 years old and lives in the same town as Remedios. He is her cousin. His perspective is relevant because not only is he a child, but he also lives in the countryside. Let's hear it.
How much time do you have to wait in order to buy food? I don't buy food, but my dad brings food every week. Which food do you usually eat? Mostly beans and cereal. You ever come to Querétaro to eat? Sometimes I come with my dad to eat after he buys food at a convenience store after I help him with work. Do you receive food from the school that you go to? No. Have you ever gone a day without eating? Yes.
There you have it, folks. Those were the interviews. In the interviews, the most important question I asked all three of them was whether or not they had gone a day without eating. And it is curious how they all answered. Yet Juan, the first interview for example, said he preferred giving food to other members of his family. But in Nestor's and Remedios' case, the situation was more of not having a place where to buy food. One thing I had not considered was the government funding of local farmers and how corrupt that business can come to be. Other thing I hadn't considered was how, because of food shortage and malnutrition of Mexican people, particularly indigenous people, were of short height. By taking that into consideration, the problem of hunger becomes multi-dimensional problem. Thanks to these interviews, now we know how serious this whole ordeal is. But now, after all this, you might be wondering, how do we help this issue? Well, the simplest thing you can do is eat all the food you make, and do not throw any of it away. Basically, just make enough food so the rest of it doesn't end in the trash. Other stuff you can do is donate to organizations that are helping solve this issue, such as the Hunger Project in Mexico. If you wonder what the Hunger Project in Mexico does, well, you can visit their website that is in Google or Bing or Firefox or any other thing you use to investigate stuff, because that is all the time we have for today, folks. See you later. Bye.